Hey there, this is Will from Spark R&D, and you're listening to the Not Snowboarding Podcast.
Dude, I had such a sick POW day. I can't wait to get inside and... No! No! Damn it! This happens all the time when I put my board against the wall, hoping that it won't fall. I wish I had something that would hold my board so it didn't always fall over.
Hey, what's up, AJ?
Nate, what are you doing here?
I heard that you were having board storage problems, and I came to give you the solution.
Anything. I'm so clumsy, and this happens to me all the time. I swear I've broken a surfboard like this.
Man, don't stress any longer. Rado Racks is here to help you.
Actually, it was your surfboard.
Wait, what? My board?
What's Rado Racks?
Rado Racks are wall and floor-mounted racks designed to store your snowboards, skateboards, stand-up paddleboards, poles, bikes, and whatever else you can hang on them. But about that surfboard...
Say no more.
I will anyways. Rado Racks are handcrafted in Colorado with the highest quality materials and come with a lifetime warranty. Prices start for as low as $50.
Shut up and take my money.
Right now, for the Not Snowboarding Podcast listeners, Rado Racks is offering a special deal. Use the discount code TNSP and you'll get free shipping in the United States.
I just bought 3.
Rado will also throw in a t-shirt while supplies last.
I just tripped 5 people and pushed my way to the front of the line.
Man, AJ, why did you do that? All you had to do was go to radoracks.com.
Would you just check out that rack? Oh my god, excuse me. I'm just talking about Rado Racks, baby.
You know, I'll talk to these kids a lot of these times, and they have this perfectly polished 200-page, business plan for this widget that they want to make, but they haven't gone out in the garage and tried to make one yet. And it drives me absolutely crazy. There's a small step you could take every day towards anything you want to do. Or it's like, do you want to open some kind of retail location? Like, drive around and see where they are. How much does the rent cost? Where would you get a business license, et cetera, et cetera. Like, don't get in your own way. Like, just start and make a small step every day. Like, the business is just like splitboarding itself. It's like, how do you drop in off of Mount Rainier? It's like, well, you put one foot in front of the other and you start at the bottom.
That was Will Ritter from Spark Splitboard Bindings, and this is episode number 51 of the Not Snowboarding Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Mousson. Today's discussion is a conversation about family, entrepreneurship, scaling a business, problem solving, education, rapid prototyping, and, of course, splitboarding. But a couple of quick updates before we get into today's episode. Thank you to everyone that's left a review in iTunes. Share the podcast with a friend or on their social media channels. And thanks to everyone that supported the podcast via our sponsors. I just set up my Rado Rack, by the way, and it took only about 2 minutes. Now, all of my surfboards and some of my snowboards are organized and displayed very nicely, and they're super easy to get to. I highly recommend these racks as a gift to yourself this year. On the gift front, now through Christmas, you can use the code WINTER at shredsoles.com for free shipping on all orders. Shredsoles, as you know if you've listened to earlier episodes, is a snowboarding-specific insole company that I run. Besides having the only snowboarding-specific insoles, we have boot-fitting products that help eliminate heel lift, toe bang, and to take up space in your boots if they're packed out. We are currently in production of a new skateboarding-specific insole that reduces impact, maintains board feel, and is super comfortable. Leading up to the launch of that insole, we're giving away a set of the best bearings in the world, in my opinion, Bones Swiss Ceramics. To have a chance at winning these $140 bearings, head over to shredsoles.com and enter your email address in the free Bones Swiss Ceramics post. You can also read about how the airline lost my skateboard on the way back from a recent trip. Let's get into the episode with Will Ritter. Will, can I hear you?
Yeah, you sound good.
AJ, can you hear me?
Way, Will.
This was a one-timer.
Yeah.
This
From the
never
blue
happens. This never happens. Usually we spend like 10 minutes trying to get everyone on the same call.
Right. Yeah, no, it came up with both you on the Skype caller ID and all that stuff. So
cool. So psyched to talk with you, man.
Oh, thanks. No, it's great to talk to you guys. And yeah, like I was saying the other day on the phone, it's just a trip to have you guys in my ears, talking to me compared to, listening to the podcast all the time and stuff. So
that's
your podcast fan?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think I've heard all of them. So.
Well, dreams do come true, people.
That's right.
You can go from fan to guest just like
it.
that. You made it.
So what
exactly?
What did you make for dinner for the kiddos?
Well, the wife did it because they're ravenous at 5:30 on the dot. So I usually get home at 5:29 or so. Yeah, we had spaghetti with polenta and some cauliflower and a little bit of spinach. And I thought it was great. And the kids just threw it on the floor and were completely annoying. And it's just one of those nights, one of those parenting nights. But
how old are your kids?
Anyway, they're 2 and 4. So, yeah, dinner time manners are something we are trying to work on every day. But
how do you handle that with that age?
With the 4-year-old, you can actually reason with her and she'll get, she understands consequences. The 2-year-old, you pretty much just have to like spin his chair around and put him in timeout over and over again because he doesn't really understand anything else. And you'll tell him to cut it out and he'll just like throw food across the floor and like laugh in your face. And yeah, it's a challenge of parenting for sure.
Is it not okay to beat your kids anymore? Because when I was a kid coming up, my mom would smack the hell out of me. Like, boy, if you do that again, like we used to get beat all the time.
I think it was just, well, now you have a crying kid to deal with as well. So I don't know that it does you any favors. And like I said, he's 2, so I don't think he would get it at all. But yeah, they sometimes to get their attention, I'll just like clap really loud, and that seems to almost have the same effect as if you were to spank them or whatever. So yeah, it's just it's hard to get their attention at this age, that's for sure. But by and large, they're really good kids. We're super lucky.
What level of table manners do you aspire to? Is it like my father, where things had to be really proper and there's no elbows on the table, or are you just looking for not spaghetti on the wall and floors?
Yeah, not throwing food off the table and sitting up somewhat straight and just trying a bit of everything. And that's about it. We're not pushing clean plate club or anything like that. We're just like, please try a bit of all this, because the problem is they'll be like, I'm not hungry, because they just want to go off and play. And then you're trying to put them to sleep. And then that's, of course, when they get hungry, so then bedtime takes another half an hour and, it's another power struggle to have, whatever. So everything just works better if they'll just eat a bit,
I think about it, and I kind of eat that way. I'll eat just a little bit around dinner. Maybe want to play or what have you. And if I have to sit down and eat a big meal and I'm not hungry, even if it's like some family event where everyone's doing it, I won't. I'm not hungry right now, but I'll be hungry. I'll be like your, I'll be like your kids. I'll be hungry at bedtime. And then as an adult, you can feel free to eat. You don't impact other people's lives just because you want to change your routine a little bit as an adult. So I guess it's a little different.
It is. There are a lot of things that are much different. I would agree. But
I know places. Oh, sorry. Will, what were you saying?
Oh, I was going to say they do get like a little snack before bedtime too, just to try and tide them over. Because yeah, it's like whatever we can do to make them like go to bed and stay asleep, and they'll definitely wake up hungry. And feeding your kid a bowl of cereal at 3 a.m. is like not ideal. Much rather be asleep. So.
I know there's places in like Western Europe. I think like the Spanish eat dinner at like 10 p.m. At night, and I kind of eat dinner late. Like it depends what time I eat lunch, but I'll eat dinner. Like, yeah, I can't eat at like 5 or 6 really. I'll eat at like 8, 9, 10, 11
right.
times.
So, but if you started your bedtime routine at 7:15 p.m., eating dinner at 5:30 is probably appropriate.
That's true.
Your kids are just telling you that they're being their most authentic selves and they don't want to fit into your box that you're putting them in.
Yeah, kids are like, they're just programmed to find out where the boundaries are with everything. And so they just, they're like those little toys that run until they, hit a wall and then they turn 90 degrees and run the other way. Like, that's all the children do. Even if they know what the rules are, they're just always pushing, just trying to figure out the world, And so, yeah, you as their parents, you get to be the grand. They're always experimenting on you, and trying something else. And they're clever, they will, even the 2-year-old will try and poke holes in your logic sometimes, and the 4-year-old for sure. Like, you got to have your game together, if you tell her something, because she'll call you out. She's a smarty pants.
I remember.
Do you ever get so bummed that like you'd like leave them somewhere? Because one time my mom, like, I was dumb as hell. I was like acting up, and she's like, "Fine, I'm leaving your ass." And I didn't see her for hours. Like, I was just gone. She left me at the beach or whatever. And I'm like,
really?
well, I'm guessing. But I was older. I wasn't like 4. I was like maybe 10 or 11. But she was just like, fuck this, and just rolled out. Like,
yeah,
I don't need this in my life.
Yeah. No, it'll really get their attention if they're just dawdling, if we go and just like start getting in the car, like without the 4-year-old, she'll definitely have a full panic attack once like the door to the garage shuts and there's no one in the house. Then she'll really get moving then. But yeah, it's the separation stuff. You can definitely use that to your advantage.
Was there a moment? Oh, sorry to interrupt. Was there a moment that you remember that you had the first like conversation with her? Like, man, I just had a conversation with my kid.
Not in particular. Kids play tricks on you, man, because they grow, a tiny bit every day and they get a little bit smarter every day. So it's like, as far as pinning, everything is on this like long, slow transition. And so like pinning down like a particular day that such and such happened, is really tricky. Right. But, definitely like they both are really early talkers. My 2-year-old, will try and pick up a book and be like, oh, that's heavy, like, Daddy, help, like he talks a ton more than, some kids that are a year and change older than him. So they both have been very chatty as early as possible. And we've always gotten tons of compliments from other parents and doctors and stuff about that. So it's great once they do start talking, because then they really kind of turn into human beings. Whereas like before that, they're like this little animal that is just like demanding stuff of you all the time. So
does it ever like blow your mind, like just even having kids? Like my friend's dad would always look at him and be like, from time to time, be like, man, you used to be in my balls. And just like, I can't believe it. You're here.
Yeah.
You're a thing.
Oh, it's a complete trip, and it gets, I remember one time in particular, like we were having the meeting with my wife's doctor, while Sylvia was still inside, and it was, we were all stressed out about something. I'm like trying to fill out some paperwork or something like that. And like, I don't know, but work was probably on my mind and whatever else. And I'm like trying to figure out how to fill out this form. And they put this deal on Becca's, tummy that's like, it's called a Doppler, but all of a sudden you hear this little heartbeat that's going at like, it's really fast, when they're little. It's like 160 beats a minute or something like that. So it's like all of a sudden in the room, there's just this like hummingbird heartbeat, coming through his little speaker. And like Becca and I just looked at each other and we were just like, whoa. It was definitely one of those like shit just got real kind of moments, where we're like, there's another person in the room. Damn. And then when you feel them kick and everything, and, then, when the baby comes out, it's definitely like such a head trip. And for us, Sylvia was a preemie. Both our kids are preemies. Sylvia was 2 months early. So it was a complete like disaster. Like as far as, you have your awesome like birth plan and all this stuff. And like, we didn't own a diaper, like we were not, we had 2 months to get ready and all that stuff. And so I was at work and Becca called and she was like, I'm not feeling so good this morning. I'm going to be in later on. And I was like, yeah, hon, sleep it off, whatever. And then she's like, my water broke. And I was just like,
Whoa.
It just, like time stopped, and I'm just like, you're sure? She's like, yep. And I'm like, I'm coming home, and just like hung up, told the dudes I was like, gotta go. And like, drove across town like a bat out of hell and picked her up and went to the hospital. And, we were just completely freaked out, as we should have been. And Sylvia came out and she was just under 5 pounds. So we're like, cool, or she was like 4, I think she was 4'8", something like that. But we're like, we're thinking like, is this baby going to be like 2 pounds or what? Anyway, like flew in a jet plane with Sylvia to this other hospital in Billings, Montana, that's bigger. And, we're there for 3 weeks and lived in the Ronald McDonald House and then transferred back in the hospital in Bozeman and all this stuff. So like, we like crash landed into parenthood, so
during that 3 weeks in Billings, she was in like a baby incubation tank, right?
I mean, there was a mix of like mainly incubator time when we weren't there. And then most of the time they want you holding the baby as much as possible, which we totally did and definitely helped her out and helped us out too. So, but yeah, in terms of, medicine and everything, it's a great time to be alive because she's doing great. You never know it seeing her. I mean, you'd probably be like, wow, this kid's smart. She's a total chatterbox, but there was certainly a time not too long ago that kids born like her, would have it super rough or maybe wouldn't be around. So
sure,
we're super lucky there. So
do you think some of the talkativeness and the fact that they were talking early has to do with your limiting of screen time that you mentioned when we were talking the other day?
I don't think so, but I think it just makes them way more interactive with people. I think it makes them like, they just want to seek you out and talk to you and see what's up and all that stuff. So I guess it kind of goes hand in hand. And then we read a ton, we read a lot of books with the kids. And, if either of them find out that you're someone who likes to read books, they will just pin you down and make you read every book in the house, So they're obviously getting into words from that. But, the screens are like, it can come in super handy because it's almost like you just hit the deactivate button on your kid and they will like sit on the couch for 10 minutes while you finish dinner or whatever. But it's super creepy, like how in the zone they get with it. So
how do you write the rules and manage that? Is it 1 hour a week? I mean, what does that structure look like?
It's basically is like, I mean, it's always kind of on, Becca and I both are just like at our discretion, whatever, but they don't have like a formal TV time or anything like that. It's a lot of times it's just when like you need them to like just chill for a second while you get something done, or like, if you're trying to get the other one to sleep or something like that. But we try and keep them at like, 20 minutes, half an hour or less per day. And there's a lot of days where they don't watch anything. And at their age, I think it's great because then they just have to be creative and play with their toys and play with each other and, do stuff and not be little zombies.
Yeah, I like how you said it is screen time because my parents took that same initiative and just cut the cable, and we had one TV in the house and it didn't move anywhere. So it was a non-issue. You could maybe with the rabbit ears get a station or two from time to time, but it just wasn't an option for us to watch television as a kid. But now everybody's got some sort of iPad or phone or, everything's a TV. They're everywhere. So it's got to be a little bit more of a task for you and so much easier too, if you just want to quiet them down for a little bit.
For sure. But they are too, they just are obsessed. They're like little crack addicts with anything with a screen. Like they have, we have a boombox that we have like an old iPhone on, and we'll play stuff off of YouTube there. And like, they will climb up on a chair to stare at like a still shot of Johnny Cash's head on a TV, on an iPhone from 5 feet away. Like anything with a screen, they're just totally hypnotized by. So yeah, we try and hide them as much as possible. And, we're the same way. We have one TV in the house and it's in a cabinet in our bedroom. But again, like you said, as far as things you could watch stuff on, there's like 10 things in the house.
Sure.
And they're smart, like they know how how to steal a phone and unlock it and start looking at your pictures and all that stuff. Like they're really
hackers.
Yeah, no, they've got it all figured out. So, but yeah, it is. I just think it's really great the way they're growing up. And it's like it just open the door, like go outside. We have a nice backyard, whatever. Like you don't need to watch tons and tons of TV and they do too. It seems like at their ages, like beyond about 20 minutes, they kind of start getting antsy and are ready to do something else anyway. We have other people asking us about, oh, did the kids like Frozen or whatever? And I'm like, man, they can't sit still for that long.
That's awesome.
So
do you ever worry that they're gonna learn more about technology now that they're growing up with it and be able to control us?
Oh, it's already coming. I mean, just the way you see them like work with a phone and stuff, it's like they're totally gonna pass me up. And that's fine. I mean, when you're a kid, you have free time to goof around and explore that stuff. And obviously I want them to be like literate with all this technology. I don't want them to go to school and be the one kid who's like never touched a computer or anything like that. That's certainly not the case. Yeah, exactly. But, I think there's, beyond a certain amount of exposure, then after that, they're kind of wasting their time. But, then of course they'll probably grow up to be like famous video game designers or something like that. And, I will have held them back with all the time I made them play outside or whatever. But
or you create a passion for whatever is kind of restricted. For my family, it was I couldn't listen to certain metal and that sort of stuff. So now I'm like obsessed with it because it was the bad thing that you couldn't have. So maybe you're creating the bug for them. And I think they'll be okay growing up in an environment where Dad has a factory with modern CNC machining and CAD programs and everything else, and growing up around that. I think they'll be on the cutting edge as far as technology goes.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast once it's like, time to make go-karts or whatever it is. We get into it. They really like, they do a ton of drawing, ton of that stuff at home. So it's coming soon. I've 3D printed them a few little toys so far, but I think it's still going to be a while before they have the patience to like put much to use at the factory. But I think, if I would have had that place at my disposal when I was a kid, it would have been nonstop, project to project, coming out of the shop.
What 3D printer do you use?
I just got a new one. It's a Lulzbot. I had one of the original MakerBots, like the kind of plywood ones. And that was some of the best money I've spent on what I do, like as a designer, is having a 3D printer and just being able to go through a whole bunch of iterations on something before we even machine anything. Like I've got, something I'm working on right now, which should, got to keep it under my hat or whatever. But, as an example, I went through like 25 iterations, at least in CAD, and then probably printed 10 or 15 of those before we even machined anything. And, I own a machine shop. I can get parts made today if I want them, but it just really helps you like evolve a design really quickly. So the new one's rad. It's just like, it's got bigger travel. It's, it's, what is it? 5 years newer than my old one. So
heated print bed.
Oh yeah. Yep. I do a lot of ABS printing for my stuff, and it's got the like PEI plastic base on it, so like stuff sticks to it when it's supposed to, and you can peel it off when you're done real easy. So yeah, it works great. But yeah, any aspiring, like I've talked to a fair amount of my employees are like going to school here at MSU here in Bozeman, and after buying a computer, definitely the next thing they should buy is a 3D printer if they want to get into the design side of things.
And what software would you recommend for running the 3D printer?
It came with like this freeware Cura that, at least as far as like you just bring in your part from CAD and then use that to, talk to the printer and run the job. As far as CAD goes, I use SolidWorks. I've been using that for a long time, and it's really handy with our CAM programs for programming all our CNCs. work, most of them work right inside of SolidWorks. But I think now I've heard really good things about like some like Autodesk, like Fusion 3D or something like that. I don't know. I've never used it, but it sounds like, freeware that's getting almost as good as the stuff that costs a couple $1,000. So
I'm asking these questions selfishly. I've had a 3D printer on order with a Kickstarter campaign for over a year and a half now from XD Machines or something like that. It was supposed to deliver late last fall. And they're right down here in Washington, D.C., not too far away. But their campaign was so successful that they went from being, hey, we want to make a couple printers out of our garage to, holy shit, we've got thousands of printers. We've got a scale way bigger than what we ever thought. And the timeline pushes way out. So I'm interested, and it's been interesting to see the evolution just in the amount of time that I thought I was going to have a 3D printer to now. The software has gotten better. The printers that are on the market for the same price point are better than what I have coming to me. So it's just interesting at how fast things change. Really, for me, I was looking for software that would be like my first 3D printer, someone who doesn't want to use CAD, just wants one interface. So I'll have to play and figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, no, that industry is growing by leaps and bounds. So it's very similar to like computers or phones or something, like how fast those are improving. So yeah, I'm not surprised that the one that was looking super rad a year and a half ago isn't out at the forefront anymore. But there's tons to choose from now. And I'm sure even if you just hopped on Craigslist or whatever, you could get something to play with while you're waiting for the other one.
Yeah.
I imagine it'll be like DVD players. Like I remember when I was younger, like DVD players, people didn't have them. They were like super expensive. You couldn't get DVD. Now they're like, there was like a breaking point where it was like everybody had a DVD player. So when is everybody going to have a 3D printer in their house? And those commercials that was like, you wouldn't download a car, would you? I'm like, hell yeah, I would. I'm going to download it and print it out, baby. Like, be on the road with that thing. Or, download food, like a 3D printed food. I think that's going to happen.
Well,
you'll have like...
They did that with... I think I've seen some people like, this is more on the maker side of things, but they have hacked, a couple different 3D printers and made like, you could print like pancakes, in like whatever shape you wanted to, or like do frosting, stuff like that. So, there are some food applications out there already, but I think it's still going to be a little while before it's like Star Trek and you just tell it what you want and then that appears, so.
I can download a snowboard at some point.
Yeah, well, you download a little a little toy one, whatever. But I do think I'm a bit skeptical that like someday in the future we're just gonna you're gonna print your own phone at home, because I own a lot of pretty awesome CNC equipment that can do a lot of this stuff way better and faster than you can on a little 3D printer that's at your house. But yeah. 3D printers are super fun. I'm not sure for like the general consumer that they're going to do, too much with it, but certainly as a designer, it's like, man, this is a great time to be alive. That this stuff is, we had in my, before I got started with Spark, this was probably like, 12, 13 years ago or something like that. Like the place I worked, they had a rapid prototyping machine called a Z printer. And that thing was like the size of a chest freezer and probably cost like 30 or 40 grand and would print these parts that were kind of like a sugar cookie.
Yep. And
like really fragile, pretty good detail, but, and then the material is super expensive. There's all this stuff to it, and now for $500 you can get something that you could be making parts right now in your, at your house. And then for $1,300 to $2,500 you can get something that's like really nice. So, it's just getting so affordable. It's really awesome.
So I wanted to talk to you a good bit about kind of that scaling thing that the 3D printer company that I had mentioned before went through, and a little bit about your experience and kind of starting a company as a side project and then transitioning over to full-time and then scaling to this point where you are now. Before we do that, maybe if you could give kind of an introduction and overview of who you are, what you do, but from the perspective of you're explaining what you do to your grandparents' friends, someone who barely can grasp what snowboarding is, never mind splitboarding.
Right. So, the like elevator conversation there when I'm sitting next to the plane with somebody, I say, yeah, I live in Bozeman, Montana, and I own a company and we make specialty snowboard bindings. And usually people are like, that's cool. And they're like, well, what kind of specialty? And then I'd be like, well, there's these weird snowboards called splitboards that have a seam down the middle, and you can take them apart and put them back together as a pair of essentially cross-country skis, so you can go out and up wherever you want to go in the mountains. And when you get back to the top, you put it all back together as a snowboard and ride down wherever you want. And that usually, people can usually grasp that pretty good. So that is, as far as grandparents' friends version goes, that's what I tell them I do, and they can usually handle that. As far as, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I like that. I've kind of used a similar explanation of it, trying to explain it to people myself. But the part that I've missed that I think was so key that you highlighted was a seam down the middle. I've always just say that it splits apart. And if you're grasping what a snowboard is and you think splits apart, they might be thinking splits the other way.
Right. Yeah. Totally. And we've always threatened to like make one of those for, April Fool's Day or something that, more like a pair of snowshoes or something like that. But
so you said April Fool's. I have to jump in and could you share a little bit about your press release on April Fool's?
We had a good time. I bought a Nordic track in town for $25, and we made this whole video about it being a training device for splitboarding called the Splitboarding track. And so I got that, like my graphic designer kind of copied the font and so on of Nordic track and made it say Splitboarding track on the side instead. And we just nerded out hard for like a couple weeks on all the different like dumb things we could do with the Splitboarding track. And so, yeah, we put that out on April Fool's Day there, and it's been our most successful like YouTube video thing that we've put out ever. So it Becca was definitely like, well, you nerds are spending a lot of time geeking out on this, so you better make it good. And it turned out good. We got a ton of views and a lot of good comments and stuff like that. So
and Becca's your business partner and your wife.
Yeah, no, Becca is my life partner, absolutely. As far as we've been married for, I don't know, going to get in trouble here, but a long time. And then been in business. I started Spark myself, and she was kind of cheerleading from the side, and it helped me out a bit here and there. And then as things got bigger, I was just pulling her in more and more for help with different things. And then at a certain point, it was just like, this is the Spark's growing. I need tons of help. I'm drowning. And it just made sense for her to jump on with Spark full time. So, yeah, she's our CFO. So she handles all of our books, financials, financing, all that kind of stuff. And then, stuff that goes far beyond that. She has an insane eye for detail. So she's catching like things that should be changed in production. She spearheads. Originally, she kind of came in to just help me with like the trade show side of things. So she's got, both SIA and ISPO kind of on lock and is always guiding the guys through that. So she's involved in a ton of things. Obviously it's, was influential with like a lot of our women's bindings and stuff that have just come out in the last year or two, and weighs in heavily on aesthetics, with everything, which is great. So yeah. And then we come home, and then we have our other job, which is, the house and the kids and all that stuff. So we are very intertwined. So I am super lucky to have her. And without, without Becca, there'd be no Spark at this point. That's for sure. So
that's inspirational, man. And it's something that I'm working towards personally. I think it's so many people, my parents, and a big part of my life has been spent, married to this person that you share a house with. But especially when we were working different schedules, I mean, we saw each other a couple hours a week. It was insane. And we worked together really well. So that's, it's really neat to be able to do that and really have a life together, as opposed to this kind of, they call it a bedroom community up here where we live. Everyone drives, somewhere else 30 minutes, an hour away, and spends just a couple hours at home, and that's it.
For sure. Well, and especially, that was some of the rougher times in our relationship, was just like when I was in full on startup mode, and working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week or whatever. Like, we didn't get to see each other much, and it was rocky, man. There's no two ways about it. So at least now, we get to, even if we're super busy with work, we're at least in each other's proximity. But, obviously now being in business for 10 years, we're out of the startup mode. We don't work those insane hours like we used to. So
well, let's back up to that a little bit.
Sure.
Dan, your marketing manager, did an amazing job of setting this up and really following up with me and kind of pinging me. And he even gave me some of the topics that, would be interesting to talk about. And some of what he sent over was about the spark that got everything started and the transition into startup mode. What was going on when you first had the idea to make these bindings?
Sure. So I was working at a product design company here in Bozeman called Strategics Vision. And that was, I went through MSU here in town and had a master's in mechanical engineering. So it certainly had tons of, book smarts, but as far as like the actual application and like seeing how things actually get made and how you develop a product, I didn't really have a clue on that front. So for 2 years, I worked at that product design company, and that really, showed me how to like, this is how you design something to go to a machine shop, or you're going to make it out of sheet metal. So it needs to go this way or that way. And so on. So kind of got some.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt and take this a different direction, but this is a topic I'm always fascinated with. Do you think that you could have done the company without your education, your post-secondary education?
That's hard to say because, obviously I think my rate of learning has increased, since I started the company, because it's like, there's just so much to know. And there's something you have to figure out every day. So I think getting my master's really taught me how to like dive into a big problem, slice it up into small problems, and then go after those small problems,
Interesting.
And really, really work on the problem solving. Cause like when you go through undergrad, it's similar to high school, not totally the same, but like, there's an answer in the back of the book. Like most of the questions are, it's a closed form kind of thing. But, you go to grad school, and if your thesis route, like I did, your advisor's like, well, what question should we be asking? So you really have to go out there and explore, and figure stuff out, and there isn't an answer in the back of the book. You're the guy that's got to figure it out, and you can get a lot of help. So, I think that I've always been making stuff, even since, from when I was a kid, like tons of Legos and constructs and making things out of cardboard, and, got into woodworking, and, I was making wakeboards in high school, and there was always something, I was always building something. So
were you taking stuff apart too?
Yeah. One of the best presents my mom ever got me was she got sick of me taking apart her stuff and breaking it. And she just bought me like an old typewriter. And she was like, here you go, take this thing apart. And I just like spent, a couple of days on the patio, just totally taking it apart. And then we just threw it away when I was done. So that was awesome for, a mechanically minded kid. So I don't doubt with, in some parallel universe where I just had to like start working after high school or whatever, I know I'd be doing something involving the building of stuff, whether it be construction or who knows what. I think the I don't think I would have had the discipline by myself to get as far as I did, without going to school, if I didn't double negative that the wrong way. So like,
I'm with you.
Just having, having that syllabus and having finals and all that stuff, because when it's on your own, there's always another day to figure some of this stuff out if you don't have some kind of urgency put on it. And certainly when I was, 18 through 22, I don't know that I would have had the discipline to go as far as I did. So
a lot of good snow that needs to be ridden.
Yeah. And I did that too, man. I went to Montana State for a reason. But I think it would have been hard for me to get where I am. But then, at the same time, I used to share my shop with a guy in town, Tyler Jaroz. Shout out to Tyler. Good luck with the broken leg there, bud. But he owns a company called 26 Products. And Tyler is like, he and I came from totally different backgrounds, where he went from school to trade school, and then just got into the machine shop and started making stuff, and then was like more self-taught on like the CAD side of things, where I was like, I had that stuff in school, but then when, someday in the future, it's like I just bought a CNC mill and had to teach myself how to use it, so there's lots of different ways to go. And none of them is like right or wrong. It's just like what's going to work out for you.
Sure.
And I was totally, super lucky with supportive parents that, paid most of the way to school. And like, nice thing about engineering grad schools, typically you get paid to go to school. And so it worked out great that way. But then, the flip side of that is you spend a ton of time learning stuff that you're not going to use in the future.
Who pays you to go to school? Your future employer?
No, the university does itself.
Okay.
Typically through like I was like a research assistant, and so there's like they have a ton of grants and stuff. So I worked on like a lot of stuff with wind turbines. I was in the like composites group in grad school.
You were killing birds.
No, I was saving fossil fuels, man. Come on. You got to kill a few birds here and there. But
yeah, coal and gas don't do anything to the environment. So so wind turbines.
No animals are. I was going to say no animals are harmed by oil rigs or mining either. I'm sure.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And then otherwise, like other people like they would have to TA or even teach a bunch of classes, and so they get paid from the university to do that. So it's a nice part about engineering. But, at the same time, then it was like, I was 22 and I graduated college. I took a year off and then I started grad school. And then that was like another 2.5, 3 years. So it's, that's a long time. And there's certainly some studies out there, where it's like for a number of things, it's like you're better off to just try and get into that industry no matter how you can and get your foot in the door and go for it.
I think particularly if you're going to end up in debt. I'm not adverse to the route that you took at all, where you can come through, you work your way through essentially or get paid to go. That makes a ton of sense. But if you come out 6 figures in debt, I mean, you're going to struggle because you're going to go to a relatively entry-level position, most likely wherever you end up going. And that's just going to be a major uphill battle. I said, that's just something that I'm fascinated with, and I think the world's changing, but I think it makes a lot of sense for a lot of professions. I just don't think it makes sense for the majority of them anymore. Yeah, well, and, most of my good friends at Burton that are now, senior level guys that are, in charge of all these product lines and so on, most of those guys started like in warranty or assembly or something, and they've just worked at Burton for a super long time. So it doesn't not having a degree doesn't mean you're not, if you're clever and you pick things up. I mean, there's always so much like industry specific knowledge that like, you're not going to find that perfect degree out there that's going to teach you like how to be, a snowboard binding engineer. But it does, certainly on the,
kind of more hardcore engineering stuff, I think it'd be pretty hard to be self-taught on that.
Sure, you need a certain base.
But, at the end of the day, I was just thinking about this podcast beforehand. It's like, if there's something you want to do, like, just do it. Like, just start doing it. That's kind of my, I get called on to be on like some entrepreneurship panels around here, and like up at the school and so on. And, I'm usually kind of the out there snowboard guy, that they bring in, and, I've got long hair and, hopefully wear my clean hoodie to that, compared to some of the other guys with button ups and all that stuff. And, I'll talk to these kids a lot of these times, and they have this perfectly polished 200-page, business plan for this widget that they want to make, but they haven't gone out in the garage and tried to make one yet. And it drives me absolutely crazy. I'm like, there's a small step you could take every day towards anything you want to do, or it's like, do you want to open some kind of retail location? Like, drive around and see where they are. How much does the rent cost? Where would you get a business license, et cetera, et cetera. Like, don't get in your own way. Like, just start and make a small step every day. Like, that's all, the business is just like splitboarding itself. It's like, how do you drop in off of Mount Rainier? It's like, well, you put one foot in front of the other and you start at the bottom. And it's like, it's the same thing with business. Like, there's a little bite you could take out every day. And I just meet so many people that get in their own way, and they're just, well, someday, some mystical day in the future, like, I'm going to start this idea that I've had forever, and it's like, a lot of times it's just more fun for them to sit around and think about it like as a fantasy. They don't have to like be afraid to fail, than to actually like just get out there and just try it. Just hack something together. Does it make any sense?
I think that's the big thing. Like, afraid to fail. You got to fail and you got to suck at first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for the most part, or you got to be okay with that. You got to be okay with like, I think one of our guests, Danny Harrison, said that. Shout out Danny. But I hear that from like comedians all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because that's one thing, you just kind of have to do it, and try it out. And you get on stage and then you bomb or whatever. And I hear that from successful comedians all the time. Like, oh yeah, the first couple of times I was terrible. Like, I went on stage, didn't know what I was doing. I sucked. It was miserable, all these things. But it was like, you got to keep doing it, and doing it not for the reasons of like, this is going to blow up right away. And everybody's going to love this. It's like, I'm interested in getting better at this, and I probably need to fail and be, or at least be okay with that and suck at it before I'm going to get better,
Yeah. Well, and again, too, it's not
scary.
But, again, if you're developing some snowboard doodad or whatever, it's like, you don't have to display it to the world immediately.
Yeah.
The audience is you and like a friend, whatever. And I mean, the main thing is to just, go small. Like, just like when you're starting snowboarding, like, what is the tiniest little thing, you could do to figure out the next thing, So it's like, for Nate with the shred soles, it's like, you could probably buy some wedgie foam from like a boot fitting supply company and cut it up with an X-Acto knife and take it out to the hill and see if it doesn't suck, whereas someone else could be, you're pouring through these biomedical journals and you're saying why this is required, and you've contacted someone and they'll make you a mold for yours that's perfect for only $5,000 and all this stuff. And it's like, no. Just what's the most garagey, what's the least amount of time and money you can spend to go and find out the next thing about this, and take it to the next tiny little level. And you just do that over and over again.
I heard when Grenade was started, they had those like little kid cotton gloves, the stretchy ones. I heard they would just like spray paint their logo, like have essentially something like that and spray paint their logo. And like, we're starting a glove company.
Yeah.
And it was just like basic shitty, like, but they were probably like, oh, what if we did this and did that? And, they were working on their image. They're working on all these things in the process. But that was the beginning.
Oh, we lost Will.
No.
We were doing so
He
good.
lost.
We were doing
Where'd he
so
go? I thought he had backcountry knowledge. How could he be lost?
good. He must not have his transceiver on.
Dude, we get the probe. How
Tyler.
could this happen with all this technology?
Skype, you were so good to us.
Broke my heart.
Well,
Hello.
Oh, you're back. We found him. We probed for you.
Hey, that was a pretty good run there with the Skype.
yeah. We figured you must not have had your transceiver on.
Yeah, right.
So take us to the point where you have the first spark.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So ground zero was definitely like, I've got the day job, and I have been, riding out here for a long time, and there's some really good, side country and even just like hike to terrain here at Bridger Bowl. So it definitely kind of breeds backcountry riders. And so at the time I was already getting out there in the backcountry with a really crappy snowmobile and snowshoes and stuff, but totally having a blast. And then a friend of mine got me out on a splitboard, and the very first time I got out on it, I was like, man, this is awesome. Like, I don't have my board on my back. My pack is light. I'm not knocking snow off of trees down my collar and so on. But I was like, this binding setup works, but it's like twice as tall and heavy as it should be, and like, I'm looking at a base plate on top of a base plate. Like, it wouldn't be that hard to just, take the parts you need to make the splitboard part work and leave out everything you don't. And, you'd have something pretty cool. And so I started catting that up, in my free time, after hours and all that kind of stuff. And then I finally, after Becca loves pointing out like the wooden base plate that I have, which was like kind of just to check the size and all that stuff, but it's hanging on the wall at the shop. And once that was looking like a go, then I sent my designs over to like sheet metal shop and machine shops, and got my first proto base plates put together, which I just reused like straps and heel loops and all that stuff off my, off like my Drake bindings or whatever that I had at the time. And so that was like 10 years ago now, which is crazy. But I got out, the very first day on it, touring and riding, and I could just tell like, this is awesome. Like my split feels way more like my snowboard, got way more control. I ditched like over a pound off the whole rig out. So, could tell right away like that this was pretty cool, but I certainly didn't envision, that 10 years later that I'd have been doing it full time for 10 years and that I'd have this company and all these people and stuff. I thought I'd make like, 20 of them for all my friends, and, it'd be fun, and that'd be about it, because splitboarding was still, in its relative infancy in that time, even though it'd been around since like 96 or whatever. So that was how it got started. I was putting up, photos of my designs on splitboard.com, and people there in the forums were just kind of chasing me down, trying to buy them. And at the same time, things at my day job, they were just having a hard time finding enough work for everybody. So they were starting to do some layoffs and like reduce time and stuff. And I was talking, to the wife about it at the time. And she was like, well, you might as well just start freelancing, because they had kind of offered that I could freelance for them instead of being an employee. And she's like, well, you might as well freelance and see what's up with this binding thing. And I was like, good point. And so I, had about like 10 grand in savings, which is nothing to start a company or whatever, but I also didn't have much for overhead. We were like living in a, had roommates and all that stuff. So I didn't have much for bills either. And just jumped off and, rented a shop with like 3 other people, and got started with, at the same time, like doing the binding stuff as well as like doing engineering work for a bunch of different customers here in Bozeman. So that was kind of more the like R&D in the name of Spark R&D back in the day. And that, starting off with that freelancing financed the the binding development to a pretty big degree. So that's sort of the origin story back then. But yeah, it was just pretty crazy to me that, the need for this piece of gear was like pretty clear, and there had even been people talking about it on forums and stuff like that, but nobody had gone for it. So I guess I was that lucky dude that, went after it and it worked out.
Yeah.
Found a hole and you penetrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
John Madden used to say.
Yeah, no, and it's so true. It's like what are the most brilliant entrepreneurs out there, like, see this demand that no one else is seeing and they crush it. Like when the iPod came out, it was like, it was like people are like, it's a what, and then like 2 years later, everyone's like, I cannot live without that thing.
And I want the next one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. The MP3 player market was, I would buy like cheaper MP3 players and they always like sucked. They were always just so, I'm like, oh, I'll just use it. And it was terrible. And then I like bought a shuffle, for $50 now. And it's like,
and it didn't
so
break.
small. No, it's sick. It's good for like, cause I was like, get my jog on, get my run on. I don't like riding with music. A little bit sometimes if I'm Drake lapping, if I'm just out there solo mission, just getting real emotional by myself. But I'll jog, I'll listen to that music and
sure,
and those things are great. Those are like, I'm like, dude, you couldn't a Walkman or a CD player, shit, come on.
Yeah, I know.
And they always skip. They would whatever.
Yeah, no, it was like I just think about like when I grew up, we were laughing at like 8-tracks and stuff like that. Now, my kids would be like, CDs with like 4-second read ahead, and like having to like polish the scratches out, and it plays for like 28 whole minutes before you need to pick another one. Like, this is garbage. So.
Yo, I tried to sell, like I worked at Wendell's last summer, and we do like a staff sale, and I tried to sell a VHS tape of Jerry Maguire. And I had kids roll up to me, could not understand what it was.
Oh yeah, they just had never seen one.
They were like, "What is it?" I'm like, "Oh, it's a movie." Yeah. And they looked at it like so confused, like trying to wrap their head around it. Like do you? And that blew my mind because I'm like, yeah, I used to VHS tapes all the time when I was a kid, and I didn't realize like they don't do that anymore. No one has a VCR.
They're looking for a screen on the tape somewhere.
Yeah, they were just like, they couldn't open up the box, and they were just like, or took the tape out of the box, and they were just like, wait, what? Like, how? How is that? They don't, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So to that point of kind of seeing the demand, what levels of market research and growth in the splitboarding area are you aware of? I mean, it's been from a high level, from my point of view, it's been one area that's really been shining in terms of growth over the past 10 years or more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we really got lucky. Like, we were just kind of paddling into the wave at the right time, because splitboarding was small enough that we could get out there and be small and make mistakes. And, we got through it. We got a pass, like our first year of production, we put out 100 whole bindings, and it took us like all winter to make those, And so I definitely feel for like the people that are making your 3D printer, because they don't get like the new guy pass. They have to scale up and be big like immediately, and that's super hard to do. So, as far as for us, like, it was a perfect time to get into the sport, because it was small enough that it allowed us to be small and, crawl before we had to run, kind of deal. But,
do you have any insight into like the market size, actual research numbers, or has anyone even done that in the splitboarding?
It's tough. There's like the trade show people, like, they put out various numbers on like how many boards they think are being sold worldwide and so on, but it usually seems a little suspect. Like, either really generally, like, I think probably a bit too either too low or too high, depending on which region they're talking about. But in general, it seems like splitboarding had like super strong growth up until maybe like 3 years ago. And now it's kind of like plateaued out to something that's like more sane. And, everyone meanwhile, like snowboarding is like gone flat or contracted. And so it has been kind of a bright spot. And I think it makes sense because splitboarding is such a like lifetime sport, where similar to free riding, where people are always going to want to go and chase powder, and I hope to be doing it with my grandkids and all that. So I think it makes sense that, with kind of this free ride renaissance that's going on, that people are getting stoked on splitboarding and venturing out there and finding good snow and so on.
Yeah, it's really romantic from my point of view almost, this exploration aspect and going outside of the resort. And then I have a splitboard. I've had one for 4 or 5 years or so. And I actually have a pair of Blazes on there, probably
Nice.
6 years old or so. But the thing that nobody tells me and rarely is spoken about, especially if you don't splitboard often, it's a shitload of work.
Yeah. And that's where, it's just something that you just get used to over time, where it's like, yep, I'm at the trailhead. If it's a shorter lap, I'm going to be dropping in and like, well, I guess it depends on where you're going. Some of the side country here, you might be dropping in like 20 minutes, like it's pretty quick, but a lot of stuff, longer stuff, it's like you're talking about, an hour or a couple hours of climbing before you're going to drop in. So it's a totally different mindset as far as like, it's not like, riding high speed quads and you're shredding in 10 minutes, after you get to the base area. So, that is a part that like, yeah, a lot of people don't talk about. And, we're kind of looking more in the future with our, some of our blog series stuff that we're doing to like talk about some like fitness kind of things. Cause that seems to be something that no one talks about in splitboarding. And I'm, kind of to your point, I'm like, well, if you want to get after something epic, you need to be able to hike it. And if you're not fit, it's not going to be as much fun. So
it must, even if it's hard work. I've never been splitboarding. I'll admit that. I have a lot of friends that do it, and I kind of really like the idea of not riding at resorts. Like I hate resorts, honestly.
yeah.
Like there's some that are pretty fun, and there are, it's fun to go snowboarding, but some of the bullshit you have to deal with and be around, and like, the cost of, I'm pretty lucky. Like I've been able to get tickets for cheap or free or whatever, or work in industry. But if I was it was my hobby and I just went into a resort and bought a ticket to ride, I'd be like kind of bummed, honestly.
Yeah.
Even if it's the best day ever.
Right. Well, and especially, if you're free riding and chasing POW, it's like such a toss up if it's going to be good riding chairs, or like here, there'll be a lot of people that will just like traverse, from here all the way across and back down to hit like this one little secret spot that's like 100 feet and then be on a cat track forever to get back, and I'm like, you really want to do that as opposed to just like, it's way more of a sure thing where it's like, well, if you go out of bounds and you hike for it, it's probably going to be good, and then
even well after it snowed,
and then like the flip side is like, you're talking about going jogging and enjoying that. And it's like, well, imagine going jogging and then at the end you got to drop in on a POW run, like I miss the skinning part, almost as much as I miss the shredding part in the off season. Cause it's just like sanity zone, like no matter how filled up I am with like stress from work and, everything else, I'm usually can be kind of grumpy at the start of the skin track. And by the time I get to the top, it's like had my workout, whatever I was stressing about was kind of worked out. And now I'm ready to drop in, and then it's just on from thereafter. So, you get to explore, go wherever you want, within reason and all that stuff. So
I don't remember who it was, but it was one of the, maybe one of the Travis Rice or Jeremy Jones videos. when he was going on a really long split, maybe deep in Alaska. And he said, well, time to go to robot mode. I just kind of shut my brain off and put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, I think too, you do just get kind of hypnotized, like there's a rhythm to it. And you just kind of get in the zone and go.
So you mentioned R&D in the name. How did you decide on the name Spark?
So like the Spark thing was just it has to do with like how you have this idea and it's just like a flash, and that's just like a spark, like out of a fire or something like that. And, if you catch it, you can light a big fire and huge things can come from it. So that was sort of how
single spark will start a prairie fire.
Exactly. So that was kind of where the name came for me, like it just, to me, I just thought it was a cool word to describe how I felt when I have a good idea, where it's usually just like, boom, like good idea just kind of appears from nowhere in my head and go from there. So that's where it comes from.
Cool. And this is,
I was going to say it is not a drug reference as much as some people would like to think.
Oh, I don't even know that was a drug.
Well, it's funny
Spark,
too because we just had all these like fire oriented names over the years, and meet these guys and they're like Spark, the blaze, the burner, blah, I'm like, yeah, dude, no, it's just about fire. It's not about smoking weed or whatever. And
God,
it's actually funny.
It's people.
It's funny here in Bozeman too, because now there's this dispensary called Spark One, and people will like get us confused.
No.
Like my friend walked into like the Spark One, and she was like, "Is this the binding place?" And they're like, "No, this is the weed place. Like binding place somewhere else."
Damn, they stole your shit like that.
Well, it's Spark One. It's not Spark R&D. So
you might get some medical grade packages on accident.
Yeah, yeah. I'm good.
So jumping ahead on the name game, why Tesla? You're trying to compete with Elon Musk?
Nah, that guy's an inspiration. He is a juggernaut. But no, it was like, again, kind of being in the like kind of electrically like fire oriented sort of stuff. And, Tesla was a total mad scientist, and I had my undergrad, most of it was in physics. And so, he was an amazing physicist back in his time. So learned about him a lot and always was kind of inspired by, his creativity and all that stuff. And it was also, we had a different splitboarding interface that we had kind of shown as sort of a like concept car sort of steez, and that we called the Edison. And then after further testing and so on, I shelved it because it wasn't as good as what we have going now. And it was kind of like, well, we can't call this new thing Edison as well because it's totally different. So it was like, Edison and Tesla were actually, kind of mortal enemies back at the time. So it just kind of made sense, like branding wise, to go with that. But
well, there's still controversy around, some of Edison's ideas that he's credited with in popular culture were maybe fundamentally originated with Tesla, right?
Absolutely. And, it's unfortunately kind of typical where it's like you might have this guy who's super brilliant, but then he'd die like penniless and, unknown, whatever. And then someone else is like, certainly more brilliant industrialist, but maybe didn't have quite the moral compass that other people would have. And also too, people love to jab at the people who end up being super successful, but there's certainly plenty of unflattering stuff about Edison out there. But General Electric still going strong. So
Yep.
You really got something going there.
Yeah. So back to scaling your business. We got a couple years in. You have how many people working with you? How do you make the leap from a handful of people to where you are today with 35 folks and 6 machines and a whole new location?
Yeah. So that is, it's not really, for us, it wasn't ever really a huge leap. It was always kind of like, what's the next little step up the stairs, you know? So like for starters, you know, we had other, you know, machine shops and sheet metal shops making all of our stuff. And then like we're doing assembly. And so we're doing, you know, kind of a more standard, you know, company design where it's like we have all these different subcontractors and we got to like, you know, order parts from this guy and that guy. And once these are done, you take them over here and you get them anodized, you know, and then you take them over here and you get them laser engraved to put graphics on them and so on. So we basically were able to each year kind of pick up a new piece of equipment or two or add new technology to our, you know, factory that would allow us to do more ourselves, be in control of our manufacturing, and ultimately like bring our costs way, way down. You know, if we were having outside companies totally manufacture, you know, especially US companies totally manufacture our bindings now, they'd be like $1,000, you know? So at a certain point, like you need to just, you know, if you're, especially in sporting goods, you know, there's not like massive margins to be had. So, you know, people seem to either go kind of one of two ways. They either go with generally, you know, some Asian manufacturing, at least on the binding side of things, or you start figuring out how to do it yourself. And hopefully you're selling enough units that you can afford to do that stuff. So for us, it's always been about, you know, how much more can we do ourselves? And luckily we had the demand with the bindings there to support that, you know, support those investments. And they, you know, they've just been turning around faster and faster as far as us investing in equipment, and it, you know, paying off within the year. One of our latest ones, we bought our own injection molding machine. So for this year, we brought about 9 or 10 molds, put them on the boat from China and shipped them to ourselves. And now we're making like all the plastic parts on the bindings in-house at Spark. And that's a machine that, you know, I hired a guy to do kind of a feasibility study on it. And it's paying itself off like extremely quickly, you know, to the point where it's like, we should have done this earlier, you know, if we had the manpower to do it. So that's kind of been our business model, is like do more ourselves to try and get, or, you know, to go after better margins and grow the company. So that's how we've grown. As far as the growing the headcount, that's just kind of come along with like, well, how many things do we need to make? Or, you know, is it time to add a position? You know, originally it's like I did everything. And then it's like, well, I could hire someone else to put these in a box and put them in put a shipping label on it, you know, and I could hire someone else to like run this machine and get these parts spit out of it and so on. So it's just been this gradual stair step the whole time, as far as adding equipment, adding people. And sometimes it's not so gradual. You know, we had a couple years early on where we had like 100% growth from year to year or even more. And those are really challenging years to get through because you got to make twice as much stuff as you've ever made before. Mm-hmm. And now, you know, with real volume, you know, at our current size, the growth is more like between 15 and 30% per year. And, you know, at this point, we're like, we don't really want to grow more than 30% a year because that's just such a huge volume of stuff to put out there. And, you know, you got to make sure you have enough manpower. Do you have enough machine capacity? Is the building big enough? You know, like the mega growth can be a huge problem, and you can definitely grow yourself to death. You know, like you're, you know, the guys on Kickstarter trying to, you know, it always goes back to that, but like, you know, people fail on Kickstarter because it goes too big. Yeah. You know, and so then they're, you know, maybe they underestimated how expensive it was going to be for them to make each unit, you know, and so if they need to make 100 units, that's not that big of a problem. They can cover it. But if they need to make 10,000, they're done before they even start because they're going to run out of money. Yep. You know, so the scaling thing is it's a real trick. And I don't, you know, again, for us, it's like start small, you know, you have everybody make as much of your stuff as possible, test the waters, see what's going on out there. And then once the thing is proven, for us, it was like bring it in-house, drive the costs down, drive quality up, capabilities up, all that stuff.
You
Do you think
subtly
snowboarding? What were you saying, Nate?
Oh, sorry. you subtly kind of mentioned, bring somebody else in to ship, bring somebody else in for each one of these jobs that I'm doing before. There's a lot more than just bring someone else in, and it's a piece that I've witnessed in a couple of different companies that is really difficult, is communicating that piece of knowledge of how it's done. What have you done on that front as far as either communicating it well or documenting how that process is done so it is more easily learned by the new person in this new role?
Sure. So I am, now with my current position as like owner, chief designer guy, I have super lucky to I have a number of employees that are like, I think Ryan's going to be at 6 years here any day now, and Ethan's at 5. So I've got some pretty long-term folks, but it was definitely for me, I'm a creative guy and not like the most organized person ever. And so it was definitely like pulling teeth, back in the day to like get our different, instruction sheets together and stuff like that. But it's something you got to just buck up and do. And it's like, it's really difficult at first because you're running around, you have way too many things to do anyway. You bring on someone to help, and the first thing that happens is you get way less done because you're there and you're trying to show this other person what's up. And so you can't even move as fast as you would by yourself. And a lot of people, it stops right there, and they're like, well, I don't want to manage people. Maybe I should do something else with myself. But what you'll find with time is like, knowledge is like a fire that just keeps growing. And it's really cool when you teach an employee something and then a week later they're just doing that and running with it. And you're like, man, I didn't have to pack all those boxes. This is awesome. And it gets the even cooler thing that will happen later on is like, and that guy taught these 3 other guys how to pack boxes and I didn't even have to talk to him. And now we're packing boxes like madmen, So like, it's that, that institutional knowledge. And like, when it gets handed down, once you've gone through it a couple times, you will develop a ton of patience to show people how to do stuff because you'll just know in the future, and it's probably not as far off as you even think. It's like, you're going to watch that person just running with something that you used to have to do yourself. And now you have more time to work on all the other stuff that only you can do. And there's plenty of that stuff that comes along. So, I think about like, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and all these other dudes, and it's like, they also, just like me, only have 24 hours in a day, but how did they achieve these insane things? And it's like, they're really good at getting other people to work on what they want them to work on. And so like the delegation part is huge. You can't get too far if you have to do everything. There's some people that are lucky that they do have a business that scales just right with one person and can make enough money and all that stuff, but not in what I'm doing. I'd love to sell, several pairs of bindings per year that are, cost 6 figures and I handcrafted each one, but that's not really not a reality,
Maybe down the road, who knows?
Yeah. I think, another thing too is like a big thing that you got to just get used to is like, you gotta kind of take your hands off the wheel a bit once you have other people working with you, and like, they're going to do things, you got to watch them and they're going to do things different than you would have done them. But you gotta, over time, it's kind of an art form you develop. Like, well, that's a little different than I would have done it, but I need to let them run with it so they develop their own confidence. And, hopefully they see it for what it is and they can see the problems with it and how they can improve it and all that stuff. Because, if you're going to have a bunch of employees that are just waiting for you to tell them every single thing that they're going to do and can't think for themselves, then that's not going to work out very well for them or for you. If they're just waiting on you to micromanage them completely, it's like I have friends who do that and they always just kind of end up like letting all their employees go. They do everything themselves for a while. because they're like, I'll just do it myself, and then they do it themselves for a while. And then they're like, I need help. And then they get help. And then they like try and work that out for a while. And they're like, that guy, he just doesn't get it, and it's like, well, maybe you don't get it. This has happened like so many times. So
yeah, what's the point of having employees and paying these people if you're just going to do it yourself and you can't if you have to manage them? That's why you hire managers and stuff.
For sure. And, again, at the end of what's really cool that happens over time is like, I taught like Ryan and Ethan, like how to program the CNC mills and how to machine stuff. And now like those guys are way better at machining than I am, and, but kind of up to like a couple years ago, I was always the guy that was like, whatever our new thing is, whether it's like a new kind of CNC equipment or printing equipment or whatever, I was kind of the guy that would go first and like troubleshoot it and figure out how it works and then like hand it off to somebody. And then at a certain point, it was like, well, I don't have time for that anymore. And so now like our newest like super sweet CNC machines, like I've never run those. Wow. My employees have run them, and like our molding machine, like I've never run it, like Ken figured it out. And so that's when it gets really cool, when it's like, well, I know where we want to go. I know which like technology we want, and I know this guy can figure it out. And so now he can run with it, so that's been like another level of awesomeness that we've achieved at Spark, where it's like, I can figure out some new piece of tech that we want and who should figure it out. And I tell them to go at it and hit me up with questions, and we just figure it out. So
is that what you're best at? Have you kind of identified what you're best at, or are you working in that direction?
I am super lucky with like, I happen to be decent at CAD. I'm pretty good at coming up with ideas for stuff, and I'm pretty good at figuring out manufacturing stuff too. So it's a weird combination that I'm super lucky, because I've met tons of people over time, and they're, might be way better at me at like machining or something like that. But then, design shops don't really have them. Or I meet guys that are insane designers, but they really need someone to like put constraints on them to keep them from just going like totally overboard on like, that might be the sickest snowboard binding ever, but it's going to be $3,000, and each one of them is going to have to be like hand built because of like these tolerance problems or whatever. So, so it's the combo. I think I'm definitely stronger as a designer, than I am at like, as a like machinist or something like that. But I think at the end of the day, like my strongest talent is just problem solving, and just figuring out, I just do the same thing over and over again. It's like, here's a big problem, cut it up into little problems. And like, how might we solve this little problem, and what's the smallest step we can take to find out if we're on the right track or not. And
actually take that step.
And then actually take that step, which we're lucky enough to have the means to do. And again, just, do experiments, go out there and make a mess, whatever. I mean, you might lose a day's work or something, but worse things happen. So you gotta just try some stuff out and see what's going to stick.
Well, I thank you so much for humoring me and going so granularly into scaling. I know that that's probably a weird topic for some people, but it's something that selfishly I'm interested in. And I aspire to do what you've done, man. I'm really impressed.
I think it's really tricky because you're trying to build this machine and you're pouring money into it. Mm-hmm. And hopefully at some point it sputters and kicks, and then the money starts pouring out the other way, before you completely run out. So it's a real challenge. I think the growth part is really tough, but again, go small, wade in there and see what's going on, and get some information and take the next step.
So as we start to wind down, I kind of have, maybe we haven't asked this question more commonly, but it's a little bit more general question. And what I'll say is, what is something that most people don't know about you? Or maybe another way to frame it, if you want to, is what is something that you believe that most other people think is crazy?
Well, I'm a former park rat from Minnesota. I don't know how many people know that. Yeah, I grew up there and transferred out here for college after reading in like Snowboard magazine, like good colleges to go to and snowboard, because I was just totally over it. Minnesota's great. It's a good place to get started, but it leaves a little bit to be desired.
What mountain did you ride?
Terrain-wise.
Or hill?
We were all over the place. I had a pass at Wild Mountain. We go to Troll Hogging a bunch, and Afton. But, we were kind of backcountry even back then. Like we were just hiking up the hill behind the church to hit a jump. So we were hiking for lines back then. It was just like for different reasons. But, we didn't have the manicured parks at our disposal that these whippersnappers have now, So yeah, that, again, as far as, seriously, and something I would think that everyone thinks is crazy or something like that.
Yeah. Something you believe that everyone else thinks is crazy. If you don't have it, it's okay. I mean, just knowing that you're a park rat is a big departure from the image of a backcountry splitboarder in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I do, I miss my booter days for sure, but, pow turns are pretty fun.
As our bodies soften, we must ride softer terrain.
Yeah. Well, and again, too, I mean, you still get to send it. It's like you just get to not pay the consequences so much. But yeah, even when, I transferred out here when I was 20, and, you land on soft snow a few times and that'll really make you not want to land on hard snow anymore.
Yeah. 100%.
It's definitely way, I lost my ice landing steez pretty fast being out here, but I have been pretty stoked a couple times, like being, like when we did this Rainier trip back in the day, like the upper part was all just like blue ice, and the Minnesota ice riding skills definitely came in handy. So it's all, it's all in there. It's all useful, somewhere. But
yeah, you're like just like home, just a lot higher.
Yeah. And there's crevasses. So don't, watch where you're going. But
so maybe a good way to wrap up would be to discuss what new sort of products are coming out here, things that you're excited about, and things to look out for into next year.
So, again, for this next year, we had a big release this year. We did a big update. We had new high backs with stuff that, I designed, and it's got a pretty awesome forward lean adjuster, so it'll flip back and get out of your way for touring, so you have a nice long stride. We also kind of simplified like the heel riser stuff and dropped a bunch of weight, so that stuff's been awesome. Coming out with the women's stuff has been great. We've sold like 3 times as many women's bindings as we thought we would, so the women are coming on strong in the backcountry, which is, great news for everybody.
I tried to get a pair for my wife this winter, and I couldn't find them anywhere. Yeah.
So that'll be, we upped our numbers for next season. So you'll hopefully have better luck with that. And again, I was, that's something I was like a little bit skeptical on, but then when you see like, women's binding and it's scaled just perfect around like a small boot, and then, the colorways are of a similar palette and like of all the colors that are on the board, like you put it all together and it's like, yep, this just looks right.
Yep.
This looks like the finished package compared to like having like a dude binding on some women's board that has, softer, colors to it, whatever. So we've been super stoked on that. We have like narrower crampons that fit women's boards better and all that jazz. So,
on the product front, what is a whammy bar and what inspired it?
So a whammy bar it's a different climbing wire that goes in the binding. And so it's got a part that sticks out the side. It's easier to operate it with your pole. And the original protos that I put together looked a lot like a whammy bar for a guitar. And so, we have a lot of fun naming stuff. We're a bunch of nerds. So we just called it the whammy bar. Now, the new one that's actually coming out in production doesn't look nearly as much like a whammy bar, but the name's stuck, so we'll rock with it. But
and the functionality had some influence from another sport, right?
Yeah, it just was, at least as far as like coming from, we do a bunch of mountain biking out here, and got us onto these, they're called dropper seat posts for mountain bikes, where you have like a switch on your handlebar and you can drop your seat like 6 inches. So when the terrain rolls from up to down, you can like switch modes super fast. And you wouldn't think it's that big a deal, but it just keeps you biking, it just keeps you moving. And it really like reinforced to me as far as like, the touring stuff goes, like just, try and make it as easy as possible for people to just keep moving, and have a continuous experience and not have to stop and mess with their stuff. So yeah, that's kind of where it comes from. And again, kind of our overarching goal for everything moving forward is like, let's just make this more fun and easier to use and more bomber in the backcountry. So that kind of applies to most everything we're doing.
Awesome, man. I have to ask you, since you've spent way more time in the backcountry than I have you ever had any sort of near misses or sketchy situations with avalanches?
Yep, absolutely. On the day I turned 30, I was out with some friends and we made a big mistake, which is pretty common, unfortunately, in splitboarding or just backcountry in general, whereas like we left with like an objective in mind. We're like, we're going to ride this peak. Like that's our goal, and it's 3 guys and we're all in good shape and we're like, yep, we're going to go ride that peak. We're going to get it done. And the whole time we're skidding up there, we're just ignoring everything. We'd seen some natural avalanche activity around us. When you're sticking your pole in the ground, you can feel there's like a foot of soft snow and then there's like this crusty layer underneath it, which again is just sets the table for a sweet avalanche. So, we made it all the way up to the top of our objective. And then as soon as we dropped in, everything just started sliding out all over the place. It was just totally brittle. And so we're trying to tiptoe our way down and like ride ridge lines and stuff. And one of my friends kind of turned above me on the hill and all the snow in between us, like 100 yards, slid. So I kind of went in the washing machine for a while and the snow went over my head a few times. And luckily stopped and was buried up to my waist. But came to a stop. I could see the guys and like, I'm okay, whatever. But then like the creepy part was like, this is springtime, like end of April, just like how long it took me to even like dig myself out, so I could get moving. And I'm just like a sitting duck under all this other snow. And so that was really, I departed my 20s doing some real stupid shit out there. And I was like, all right, time to pay much better attention. And then there's been other times like I went out and, again, like even later springtime stuff. And like, it's been raining and the snowpack is just turning into like a big slushy cone. And, again, like skinned up an area and then go in and drop and make one turn and like the whole thing slides like through these trees that are just kind of like, break your legs and worse possibly. So definitely have had, some sketchy situations out there. So I've gotten, more and more conservative over time with, avalanche safety, having a better, mental knowledge kit, being mature enough to be like, I'm that guy that's going to turn around, I'm like, guys, I'm not feeling it today. If you want to go for it, but I don't feel right about it, and, I mean, especially with the kids, I certainly am more and more conservative when it comes to AV danger, and that is that's the absolute worst part of what we do is that it is dangerous and people die every year doing what they love and what we love, and so we're always trying to help people be more educated, but it is it's a risk management kind of thing. So, you got to be smart and live to ride another day.
Have you done formal?
It ain't a game. It ain't no game.
Oh, AJ.
That's right.
Was that break it up really bad for you or just me?
Yeah, that was like the AJ remix. Get that. It ain't no game drop from AJ.
That's accurate. Have you had any formal training around that?
Yeah. Yep. Did like some AVI classes, back in the day here, and then definitely attend a number of presentations each year and so on, but could always be better. It's like anything else, where it's like safety isn't always like the most exciting thing to, work on. But yeah, we're looking at, for this coming year, trying to do some like education events with like Spark itself. Everybody, for the most part loves to split at Spark. And so just trying to keep our guys safe and do more education out in the field and so on.
To that point about everyone loving to split, how are you doing with your New Year's resolution?
Let's see here. Which one was that? Eating salads every day? I'm doing good on that one.
I didn't know about that one. I just knew about the one on the blog, which was split more.
Oh yeah. Doing pretty good, and that a lot of that too is just like the kids growing up a bit, so being able to sneak out a little bit more. I went down to the Silverton Split Fest this year and had like 4 solid days in a row where all I had to do was go splitboarding and then hang out and talk about splitboarding, and that was awesome. But I definitely I get after it when I can, which is not a ton, but if I have 4 hours, if I get a half day because the wife's taking the kids home to watch them for the afternoon, I'm going for it, man. I'm going to try and squeeze in as much as I can. And, again, being, pretty time constrained on it. It's like, I'm always having a good time out there, even if the snow's total garbage. I'm out in it, I don't get to go every day. And, it's always a good day for me. The worse the snow is, the better it is for testing gear and so on. So
I see that with my friend that I surf with, Paul, a bunch. He's got 2 twins now, and he doesn't get to go out. He goes out about half as much as I do, but he's been progressing now because when he goes, this is it. I've got to get it all in. He's in the water from the moment we're out there until the moment we're leaving. And sometimes he'll be in the water for 6 hours. Just catching every wave, just getting it as hard as he can, because this is it. I don't get to go again tomorrow. I don't get to go again next weekend. I got to get it now. It's got that same time constraint and structure around what I think you mentioned before your education gave you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what the kids, they are time intensive for sure, but they definitely will make you appreciate when you do get the dad sanity time, you definitely appreciate it that much more. That's for sure. Well,
this has been awesome, man. I thank you so much. Do you have any kind of parting words or any areas that you want folks to find you on the internet besides the website, sparkrnd.com?
Yeah, check us out on the website. Hit us up on Facebook. We're always, having fun, interacting with people and so on. Parting words, get out there, have fun, be smart. And again, whatever, if you are trying to do something business-wise, whatever, it's just find the next small step and take it. You won't regret it. You'll regret not taking it.
Perfect, man. Thank you. This was awesome. AJ, are you in remix mode or are you with us?
I think I'm with you.
You're with us. You're perfect, dude.
Sound normal.
Sick.
Well, that was rad, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks, guys. It was a lot of fun.
So if you were wondering, I've still yet to receive my 3D printer, but some of the backers have reported that they've received theirs, so maybe it's coming soon. On another note, I want to say thanks to Dan Ventura at Spark for connecting us with Will. Dan heads up marketing over there, and he's kicking ass with valuable original content on the blog, like the Splitboarding Fitness series that Will mentioned. Dan's also recently launched the Spark R&D podcast, and I'll put a link in the show notes directly to it, or you can head over to sparkrnd.com to check it out. We've had some interest in the Seven Springs trip that I've mentioned before. I've put a hold on a cabin, which is just walking distance from the snow, and the dates that we're looking at are February 24th through the 26th. That's right during the Oakley Mini Pipe Challenge, which is a really fun event every year. I tried to get a tour of the cabin yesterday, but it was rented out to another party, so I could only see the outside. But what I can tell you is that the cabin is really big with tons of space for parking. The sales director said that it sleeps 15 people, and we've had interest mentioned from 9 folks, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger on it. I should have more specifics ironed out as far as cost and agenda by the next episode, but if you are interested, please email me at nate@shredsoles.com. Thank you again to everyone that's been supporting the podcast. Many of you have been clicking through the Amazon banner ad before shopping on Amazon. That's super helpful. And thanks so much for the positive reviews on the various listening platforms. We just hit 100 reviews in iTunes. I'm definitely humbled. Until next week, peace and earn your turns.